Yesterday, I had the talk with my wife after so many years together. We've both noticed that we don't sleep well without each other, a pattern that has persisted for decades. Strangely, the night before, I had a surprisingly good night's sleep without her. She walked through the door looking terrible: lack of sleep, guilt, fear, and red eyes. Typically, my heart would break, and I'd comfort her, but not this time. I was sitting at the table when she started crying again and rushed in for a hug. I put my hand up, told her not to touch me, and asked her to sit down. After offering her a coffee, I made it clear this wasn't about her, but about me and the marriage. I told her we were done, that she had made her choice, and this was about making mine. I had already made up my mind, but I wanted some semblance of truth. I had spoken with her sister, true, and a couple, not true, hoping she'd be a bit more honest if she thought there was a chance. I felt a strange mix of emotions: happiness that she was so upset, sadness for us, and all the usual disappointment and anger. Despite the turmoil, I remained surprisingly calm, which seemed to freak her out the most. It felt like I was conducting a job interview. I asked her how many times she cheated. She admitted to a physical encounter once in two instances on video chat. I asked her to explain how it happened. According to her, what started as a business discussion turned into flirting, and when the other couple, a husband and wife, approved, it escalated over a few months. She cried as she confessed that it went further than she knew was safe, but admitted the danger made it more exciting for her. Before she could give more justifications, I cut her off. I didn't want to hear the excuses. After a brief wait during which I got her tissues, she said they met up as arranged, and after her sisters left the bar, they went straight to the couple's room. I questioned if she ever intended to tell me, and she said no, it was just a fantasy she thought she could fulfill without thinking about cheating again. I called her out and asked if she had cheated over the last 33 years. She said never. I made it clear to her that the number of times she cheated no longer mattered, whether it was once or 1,000 times. The result was the same, and the only ones who would be hurt by lies were our kids and her relationship with them, as well as our future relationship with grandkids. I expressed my disbelief in her words, but at this point, it was irrelevant. She pleaded with me to work on our marriage, offering anything, even allowing me to have affairs if I stayed. She promised never to cheat again. I cut her off, telling her to listen to what she was saying and that she had degraded herself enough. I emphasized that I would never cheat, and if I ever slept with another woman, it would mean we were separated with no chance of reconciliation. I felt relief, remaining pragmatic throughout the conversation. When she reached over to grab my hand, I refused, stating that I would never touch her again. I clarified that it wasn't about judgment of anyone's lifestyle, but trust and respect were irreparably destroyed when she planned to be with another man intimately. I made it clear that our relationship was over, and the woman I loved and married was dead to me. I expressed my anticipation for separate lives and the prospect of creating new memories with someone else. I told her that all the good memories we shared were just that, memories. We would now go our separate ways, and I looked forward to what the future held without her. She shook and cried, but it didn't faze me. I just wanted her out of my house. She couldn't continue the conversation, so I went down to the shed and reached out to my kids by phone. I informed them of the situation, and they were supportive, advising me not to drag it on. Returning upstairs, I reiterated that we would sell the house and business, splitting everything 50-50ths. She could have the car, and I would take the truck and my motorcycle. I allowed her to take the cats, but emphasized that she shouldn't contact me unless it's about the kids or grandkids. I made the decision to contact lawyers and initiate the divorce proceedings, allowing her the freedom to move on. When she expressed that she didn't want anyone else and accused me of being deliberately mean and unemotional, I remained honest. I explained that her actions had placed me in an emotional void, and she was solely responsible for the destruction of our marriage. Despite loving her unconditionally, she was the one who chose to break it. After stating my piece, I left the house, giving her time to sort herself out and gather a few more things. I spent a few hours at my daughter's talking and playing with my granddaughter. When I returned home, she had left, and surprisingly, I had the best night's sleep without her that I'd ever had. Over the following weeks, I reflected on my decision and affirmed that it was the right one. Trust and physical intimacy were irreparably damaged, making it impossible to continue the relationship. She stayed with her mother, and I took steps to sell our house, which we had lived in for 20 years. The business had already been sold to a client who wanted to expand, and the settlement would happen in about a month. The divorce process and my location required 12 months of separation before filing, and it takes an additional 4 months for an uncontested divorce to be finalized. Property settlement occurs after the divorce is finalized. I am to have everything settled by the time the divorce process began. Her cooperation in signing sales contracts made the process smoother. Family dynamics varied. My son had a difficult phone call with her, expressing his displeasure, while my daughter, although ashamed of her mother's actions, continued to support her through the breakup. She provided a truthful and comprehensive account of the repercussions of her actions. Despite this, my soon-to-be ex-wife seemed deluded, thinking that I would eventually get over it and forgive her. She genuinely believes that the years we spent together will be enough to make me change my mind. When she came over to sign the real estate contract, she told me confidently that I would change my mind, that I still love her, and she'll be a better wife when I decide to come back. She painted a picture of us growing old together and having a wonderful life, treating this whole ordeal as just a minor hiccup in our marriage. I was gobsmacked. I couldn't comprehend how she could think any of that. She lied and cheated in the worst possible way. She was being drilled by one man while another one had his sausage down her throat. I told her straight up that she's nuts to believe I'd want anything to do with her again. She tried to justify herself, saying she knew she shouldn't have gone through with it and that it wasn't even that good. I shut her down, telling her I didn't want to hear the details. The point is, she did it. There's zero hope of reconciliation, and I want absolutely nothing to do with her. I'm genuinely looking forward to moving on with my life without her. It seems like she's in massive denial about the reality of our situation. She no longer has any control over my actions, and her attempts to downplay the consequences of her scheming and cheating won't work. She had to know what would happen as a result of her actions, and she can't be naive enough to think otherwise. Interestingly, I'm getting attention from other women now. I'm not interested in anything at this time, but it's reassuring to know that when I'm ready, there will be plenty of options. My ex-wife even got angry when she found out that women we know have been visiting and bringing me dinner just to talk. She told me she wants me to get it out of my system and that she'll be waiting. Seriously, how delusional can she be? The only thing I want out of my system are the emotions: hate, anger, disgust, the sense of loss, betrayal, and sadness. I'm a strong man, and I'll deal with them. My goal now is to focus on untangling any financial ties with my wife and getting on with my life. Now for the second story. We've been married for 22 years, together for 24, and our lives have been predominantly centered around our 2 children. Our commitment to providing them with the best, including a private education, has been consuming. The sacrifices we made for their well-being left little room for our relationship. Our lives felt repetitive and monotonous, and we often shared those feelings. We promised ourselves that once the kids were grown, we'd focus on revitalizing our marriage. About 6 months ago, my wife dropped a bombshell, expressing doubts about us being best suited as a married couple. She admitted that we were great parents, but not necessarily the best husband and wife. Her words were hurtful, especially when she mentioned she may have never had the hots for me, but saw me as a loyal and reliable guy. It cut deep, and over time I found myself feeling less and less for her. Interestingly, Instead of lamenting the impending divorce, I began to see it as a transition to a new phase of life. I had accomplished the goal of raising smart, successful children, and now I could move forward. Similar to the excitement I felt leaving my parents' home for college, I started feeling an internal happiness and excitement about the prospect of being single again. With the divorce on the horizon, I've become a more sociable person, laying down the groundwork for a life after marriage. During the marriage, much of my identity revolved around being a father and a family man. However, I've started to shift that and embrace more of my true self. Surprisingly, this change in my social circle seemed to catch my wife's attention. She even talked to her friend about my newfound swagger and charm. But what struck me as odd is that after she claimed she didn't have the hots for me, her own behavior started to take a different turn. Where I used to be the initiator in our intimate moments, she became sexually aggressive and our frequency of intimacy skyrocketed. Now, when she's expressing a desire to work on our marriage and reconsider the divorce, I find myself feeling upset, even though there aren't any apparent problems in our relationship. Strangely, as sleazy as it might sound, I was actually looking forward to the divorce, excited about the prospect of exploring new connections. This sudden shift in my wife's feelings has left me confused and questioning her motives. Adding to the confusion is the past suspicion of a potential affair. While I caught her in a lie about a gift from a coworker, it doesn't seem to provide conclusive evidence. I'm puzzled about her attitude towards me and our increased sexual frequency. Did she say she didn't have the hots for me and now feels guilty, trying to make up for it? If so, why is our intimacy still so high? Has she developed feelings for me again? And if yes, what triggered that change? I haven't undergone any physical transformation or professional success. I've been happier, but mainly towards others, as my attitude towards her has possibly worsened. I've become more aloof, a bit more sarcastic and teasing. It's like there's a lot happening beneath the surface that I don't fully understand. Right now, my inclination is towards divorce, and I recognize there might be a bias in the way I'm presenting the information. A few months later, I did get my divorce. I did lose a lot financially, but realized that I have become a better person, and professionally, I have become more successful. I will recover from the financial burden and soon will be better than ever.